Hello my friends, my name is Mark David Welsh, I'm an author and publisher, and I'm here to welcome you to the Writer's Lab. This is the part of the channel where I'll be sharing my opinions, thoughts and practical insights on the art of writing fiction. Hopefully these will be of some help to you if you've just started on this journey, or perhaps if you've got to a stage where you're feeling a little disheartened and you're a bit stuck. Now, I'm not a best-selling author or a darling of the chat shows by any means. So you might be wondering, why am I qualified to give you advice about the writing process? Well, all I can tell you is that I've got experience and these are my opinions. And of course, they're just opinions and you can feel free to disagree with them in the comments below. However, I am still a struggling author with one foot in the trenches, scrapping for every foot of earth in this business. So I do think that gives me a valid perspective and one that could be useful to you. Now in today's video I'm going right back to basics, to the fundamental question that every author needs to ask themselves. Why do you write in the first place? And what do you hope to achieve? Sorry, I'm going to ask the two fundamental questions that every author should ask themselves. Why do you write in the first place, and what do you hope to achieve? Okay, this might seem a strange place to begin. Why should every writer ask themselves those two questions before they start? Because writing is a tough gig. Oh yeah, it's tougher than brain surgery, quantum mechanics, nuclear physics. It's a tougher job than being a paramedic, a social worker, a teacher, a caregiver. Okay, it's not as tough as those things at all. It's not in the same league. But it is still hard. Now, I'm not just talking about the creative challenges here, which are obviously quite significant. I'm talking about the challenge of time. Because writing a novel, a good novel, does take a long time, and you have to go back to it day after day, week after week, month after month, often when you just don't feel like it. Now, unless you're lucky and have an incredibly supportive partner, you're likely to be doing this with zero encouragement and only your fragile self-belief for company. So before you take on something like this, I think it's very important for you to know why you're doing it and what you hope to achieve at the end of it. So let's examine a few of the reasons why you might want to write. So let's start with a very simple one. You're good at it. And who doesn't enjoy doing something that they're good at? People have been telling you all your life that you can write, and you know you can write. This is a perfectly legitimate reason, but is it going to be enough? How are you going to feel 8 months down the line if your work hasn't turned out to live up to your own expectations? If you may be stuck on a certain plot point or character development? You're going to be angry, frustrated, and perhaps, most importantly, disappointed in yourself. Will you have the wherewithal to go on? Because where's the enjoyment now? Okay, let's take this a bit further. Maybe you write because you're driven to it. You've always had a passion for reading, an appetite for words, and a conviction that being a writer is all you've ever wanted to be. Maybe you're not any good at anything else. And you're a focused, determined and disciplined individual who can't wait to get to their keyboard every day and pound out a few thousand words. If that's you, then I'm really jealous. Now, it's not that I can't make the effort every day or don't. I'm just very easily distracted. I'm the sort of guy who walks into one room to do a bit of home improvement, realizes he needs a tool that's in a different room, goes there, realizes he needs to start a job in that room, and forgets all about the original one he was doing, only to remember a few hours later. So if you're one of the lucky ones who is driven, focused and disciplined, that's great. The only danger is that level of intensity may make your expectations unrealistic and also make you very, very difficult to live with. And if you've got the talent to go with that drive and determination, you will have a much better chance of being published than someone who is writing just because they enjoy it. The reason is that you will have set yourself a definite target, and that target is to get published. And to get through the rough patches of the creative process, you need to be working towards something. Perhaps instead you've got something to say. You're sick of all the negativity in modern media, the fake news, the political spin, the lies spread by our so-called leaders. You hate to see people taken in by them and their spirits crushed and their dreams unfulfilled. So you want to do something to redress the balance, even in a small way. Obviously with this one you need to keep your expectations very realistic, because in all the oceans of words that have been published since Caxton invented the printing press, well, there haven't been too many books that have changed the world. However, if your goal is just to change a few people's opinions and make them think a little bit, this can still be a very valid motivation for writing. And if it's coupled with the determination and drive I mentioned earlier, even in a minor quantity, this can be enough to get you to the finish line. Okay, so let's get a bit more practical. You want to make a living at writing. Well, this is a good one, because obviously this kind of pragmatic approach, melded with that determination and drive I was talking about, is a formula for success. However, this will probably mean you putting your novel to one side for a while you establish yourself as someone who can string a few words together. The good thing about this method, of course, is that you make connections along the way which will possibly facilitate your entry into the traditional publishing world. Obviously, writing columns for your local newspaper or blogging isn't really writing fiction, but it's a much more practical way of making a full-time living as a writer, simply because of the length of time it takes to actually write a novel. I mean, it could be a year into the project, and it could be a year since you last published anything. How are you going to pay the bills in the meantime? And finally, we come to the last one on my list. You write because you want to be rich and famous. Well, that's perfectly legitimate, of course. Who doesn't want a better standard of living? But maybe you should ask yourself one thing. If you were to go into the street today, stop someone and ask them to name as many famous living authors as they could, how many do you think they could come up with? Half a dozen maybe? Then ask them the same question, but about sportsmen, or pop singers, or politicians. The lists will be a lot longer. The fact is that to become rich and famous by being a writer isn't easy. Okay, so you may feel you don't have the necessary skills, talent or aptitude to achieve that level of success in any other field. I mean, I played a season's worth of Sunday League football many years ago, and I remember one match where we were 11-0 down with 10 minutes left, and the opposing team took off one of their players to open up the bar. They didn't bother bringing on a substitute and still scored 4 more goals, and I was playing in the defence. So I've never got to play for England, and I'm still waiting for my call up from Torquay United too. I mean, come on Gary, you know I could do a job at National League level, mate. Probably sweeping the terraces or serving the tea at half time, but anyway, my point is, temper your expectations if that's your motivation. This is seriously unlikely to happen. It's not impossible, of course, and it might be you who achieves that. But you need more than just talent. There was that persistence I was talking about again, as well as the ability to assess the market to deliver the exact correct product at the opportune moment that catches the public imagination, to get yourself noticed, to be good at marketing and self-promotion, which is something that most writers like myself really hate to do. In short, it's a combination of countless factors along with a hefty slice of luck that would enable you to achieve such a level of notoriety. But that's not to say it couldn't happen. You never know. It could be you. So wrapping up this little chat, in summary, I think it's important that before you approach a project as large as a novel, that you know why you're doing it and what your long-term goals are. Because those things will assist you in getting to the finish line, because it's a long process and it's a pretty hard one. And I think you need to know where you're coming from and where you're going. So after all this chat, you may be left with a question. You may be thinking, well, that's all well and good, but why does this guy write? What's his motivation? Well, I'd say it was a combination of all the things I've mentioned to greater or lesser degrees. With the exception of the fame thing, I really can't understand why anyone would want to chase that particular ghost down. I mean, everyone knowing who I am would be my version of hell, quite frankly. Well, the easiest way to sum this up is that writing and publishing validates me as a person. Pretty deep, huh? Well, for years I wrote as a hobby, never did anything with any stuff that I wrote, didn't finish most of it. But it was only when I published my first novel, Vagabond Sky, in 2013, that I realised what a massive boost to my self-esteem it was, and a massive boost to my happiness. It changed everything for me. And I'm just pissed off that it took me so many years to work out that's what I needed to do with my life. Well, I hope that's given you some food for thought anyway. Writing a novel is no small undertaking, and if you want to give yourself the best chance of finishing it, I think you need to be very clear why you're doing it and what you hope to achieve with it. So I think it's helpful to ask yourself those two fundamental questions before you start any major writing project. After all, you may well have to remind yourself of the answers at frequent intervals along the way. My name is Mark David Welsh, I'm an author and publisher, and I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts on the writing process today. If you have, please press some of those buttons down there, they help me out, and join me in the comments below. I'll be publishing more videos on the writing and publishing process over the next few weeks and months, and I hope to see you in some of those. But for now, please remember, don't be a stranger. Hello my friends, my name is Mark David Welsh, I'm an author and publisher, and I'd like to... How hard can this be? All I can tell you is that... God, this is going to take me forever. As an author still struggling with one foot in the trenches and scrapping for every feet of earth. Feet of earth, foot of earth. So I think you'll be putting yourself in the best place to ensure a successful collusion? God. See, why didn't I do that the first time? Because that was alright. So let's take a... Car reversing. Or was that my smoke alarm? So after all this, you might be saying to yourself, well, he's been talking a lot, but he hasn't said anything about why he writes. Well, I don't know. Why do I write? I haven't got a bloody clue, actually. I'm a masochist, I think that's what it is.